emerging more resilient in 2021, owing in part to effort of the agencies of the Ministry of Petroleum Resources who work under my leadership.
Nigeria's energy sector receives boost as President Buhari commissions Oil and Gas Excellence Center in Lagos.
President Buhari urges Nigerians to see payment of tax as a solemn obligation.
Nigeria's Governors Forum pledges commitment towards containing the rising second wave of infections in the country.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall continue our conversation on governing Nigeria's rural communities.
Now, the role of the local government, being the closest tier of government to the grassroots in rural development, cannot be overemphasized. The Nigerian political arrangement, which is a subject of discourse in some quarters, is sometimes questioned with regards to the essence of true federalism, which of course is a decentralization.
Well, it also turns out that fiscal practices are skewed in favor of both the central and state governments, coupled with issues surrounding accountability, all of which have given rise to thwarted efforts at meaningful development in the third tier of government. And this is particularly because a large percentage of Nigeria's population are mostly to be found in the rural areas, and therefore the development of such environments cannot be overemphasized.
Well, that's right, Kingsley. And the development of rural areas impacts positively on per capita income and food production, generally speaking. And the development of the grassroots has always been the concern of every responsible and responsive government, not just in Nigeria, but elsewhere globally, because it is the outcome of a series of quantitative and qualitative changes occurring among a given rural population whose converging effects indicate in time a rise in the standard of living.
Well, Kieran, what you've said is particularly important. Yesterday we had the first conversation on this subject matter, and it has to do with governing Nigeria's rural communities. It isn't just a question of development. It is not to seek to convert rural areas into urban centers, as it were, but two primary reasons that we have seen lately. You've seen the so-called ungoverned spaces where there are kidnappers, bandits, and sundry criminals have taken over large swaths of spaces in the rural communities. These are in the forest area. So what has happened to the proper governance of the rural communities?
We should be responsible for those ungoverned areas.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We have the necessary apparatus, to monitor those areas, properly,
yes.
Unlike what we have on hand right now.
That's right. It isn't just a responsibility of the local governments. You also have the traditional authorities. You also have community development associations, and particularly also
town unions.
Town unions.
Each great system.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so this is part of what we've been taking a look at in our second part of the conversation this morning, Kieran.
All right. I might add that most of these areas that we have raised will be quite important as we make progress in this particular conversation this morning. And I want also to ensure that all Nigerians are carried along as we open up today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And of course, we may be posing too many questions to our guests who are actually in a better position to, of course, do justice to those questions.
All right, Kieran, on that note, we'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We're broadcasting live, as always, on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. In the course of the program, we have our regular segments, and those segments, of course, will include newspaper review, business, and others. Kieran?
All right, and my name is Kirian. Welcome to the program. For now, we have to join Comfort Amodu for the morning news. Good morning, Comfort.
Good morning, Kirian and Kinsley, and good morning, Nigerians. Here's the morning news. The federal government says it will spare no effort at diversifying the nation's economy using the oil and gas industry as a pivot towards expanding revenues, enhancing the gross domestic product, generating employment, and effectively contributing to eliminating poverty in the country. President Muhammadu Buhari stated this while virtually inaugurating the National Oil and Gas Excellence Center of the Department of Petroleum Resources in Lagos. He urged all industry practitioners and relevant stakeholders to join his administration in the task of ensuring that Nigeria exploit her enormous potentials for nation building.
2020, global economies were faced with unprecedented challenges and severe shocks in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic and the attendant consequences therefrom. However, we are emerging more resilient in 2021, owing in part to effort of the agencies of the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, who work under my leadership to keep oil and gas production levels stable, optimize government revenues, and ensure domestic energy security.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has made a case for Nigerians to see the payment of taxes as a solemn obligation, saying that no nation has ever made progress without having to pay for it. Declaring open the first national tax dialogue, the president also insists that foreign businesses must not be allowed to continue exploiting the nation's markets and economy without paying appropriate taxes.
This was clearly demonstrated by the provision of the Finance Act 2019, whereby government exempted small companies from tax and reduced the income tax rate for medium companies from 30% to 20%. We went further to cushion the burden of tax on the low-wage workers by exempting minimum wage from personal income tax.
And in other news, the Nigerian Governors Forum has disassociated itself from statement by Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello casting doubt on the existence of the ravaging coronavirus pandemic, while the forum pledged commitment towards containing the rising second wave of infections in the country. The Nigerian Governors Forum responded to the Governor Bello's remarks in the media as the forum's 24th teleconference on COVID-19. The forum also interfaced with global and local partners, including the World Bank, on the epidemic preparedness and innovations to facilitate COVID-19 vaccines by February 2021. And the Nigerian Center for Disease Control has announced 1,964 new COVID-19 infections in 23 states and the FCT. In the latest figures released, Lagos is still leading with 824 new cases. FCT has 246, Plateau 166, Kaduna 128, Ogun 76, Nasarawa 72, Anambra 69, Edo has 50. Rivers 45, Ondo 44, while Niger has 40, as Oyo State has 38 new cases. There were 35 new cases recorded in Adamawa, 31 in Kano, 27 in Akwa Ibom, 19 in Gombe, 13 in Kwara, 12 in Ekiti, Delta and Kebbi recorded 6 new cases each, as 5 were recorded in Bauchi, 4 in Ebonyi, 3 in Osun, and 1 in Zamfara. Now, active cases at the moment are 21,524 in Nigeria. So far, Nigeria has 116,655 confirmed cases of COVID-19, with 93,646 discharged, while 1,485 died of the virus. Now, the National Economic Council insists there will be no lockdown of the economy for now as a result of the increase in the number of COVID-19 cases in the country. But public health measures already put in place to prevent further spread and damage will now be strictly monitored and offenders punished.
That we need to begin to talk to our people and to talk to the religious leaders to ensure that we reduce the level of gathering that we have. We also briefed NEP and on the regulations, the Health Protection Regulation 2021 as it relates to COVID-19 pandemic prevention, which we are waiting to be signed by Mr. President.
A slight yet significant reduction in the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria has sparked renewed hope in ongoing efforts by the federal government to end the lingering negative trend in Nigeria. Minister of Education Adamu spoke to the issue at a media event in Abuja.
Providers and school owners of Nigeria have been working very closely with the ministry to reduce the number of out-of-school children. As of the last count, the association has taken over 1 million out-of-school children off the streets. In the last 2 years, 1,900,000 illiterate Nigerians have been able to read and write in English or 3 Nigerian languages.
Former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan has listed restructuring of the mind to love and foster national unity as a major ingredient that could take Nigeria to the promised land. It was reported that the former #1 citizen was speaking as the chairman of the 18th Daily Trust newspaper dialogue with the theme restructuring, why, when and how.
We should encourage a healthy conversation on restructuring and reforms that steer national pride and love and faith of our citizens in our beloved country. Nigeria is still the greatest gift history has bestowed on us, and of course the black race.
That's the morning news highlight. Good morning, Nigeria continues shortly with Kirian and Kinsley after this break. Good morning.
A scorecard like no other. Government has put in place measures and initiatives principally targeted at youths, women, and the most vulnerable groups in our society. These included broad plan to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. The creation of 75 billion naira National Youth Investment Fund to provide opportunities for the youths, and the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Survivor Fund, through which government is A. Paying 3-month salaries of the staff of 100,000 micro, small and medium enterprises. B. Paying for the registration of 250,000 businesses at the Corporate Affairs Commission. C. Giving a grant of 30,000 naira to 100,000 artisans and guaranteeing market for the product of traders. These are in addition to many other initiatives such as farmer money, trader money, market money, N-Power, N-Tech, and N-Agro. These and more in spite of a recession and a global pandemic. Although social media as a channel of communication is inherently harmless, it becomes harmful and damaging when used without discretion and thoughtfulness. Bad social media users spread rumors and fake news without verification. But good social media users stop, reflect, and verify information before sharing it. Be a good social media user. Stop the spread of fake news. Verify the authenticity of your source and use social media responsibly for a better Nigeria. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, in collaboration with the National Orientation Agency.
Dear customer, link your Airtel number to your national identification number today. Here are easy ways you can do it. Dial *121*1# on your Airtel line and follow the prompts on the screen. Type in your 11-digit government-approved NIN number. You will receive a confirmation message to confirm your entry. You can also visit www.airtel.com.ng/NIN to link your phone number to your NIN. If you do not know your NIN, simply dial *346# to get it. No stress, no wahala.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
I bring you wonderful news. The village headmaster is coming back to your screen. Mo wire abi mi o wire.
Teacher ló mọ̀, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Teacher jọ̀wọ́, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Ọmọ onírẹsì ti dé.
Born a better school for last meeting. Not be all this on a rugged school for Ijabi. I don't know for you.
It's called Oja Village. Kadesi. We know how to at all.
And I know that even you too, you are getting a lot of orders. Hey, we are trying, shall sweep her leg out. She was standing there. Sweep it.
I love you so much.
And how did I give you the impression that I was interested in that position?
50-year anniversary.
You mean anniversary?
Everything, before I talk with that now. Don't for me. Not for me because of Pamio.
I'm a fire, no be peace, don't rest up. You know, if you know,
You are watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now to business. Business owners are enjoined to embrace digitization to survive effects of COVID-19. Let's now join Kunle Adeye for details of that package.
With the second wave of COVID-19 still unabated, safety guidelines have restricted a lot of activities which business owners now grapple with. Surviving the new normal now becomes survival of the fittest. A development expert, Remy Hazen, has suggested that digitizing business operations might serve as antidotes to addressing this challenge.
Digital marketing comes in easily. And when you digitalize all of your operations and bring it onto the cyberspace and reach out to the target audience that you're actually after, you will see that the restrictions will have little effect and you'll be able to cover some ground.
He said the low cost of digitization is also an advantage. And here are the details of tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeye.
Our appreciation, Kunle, for the business package. Next is newspaper review.
Let's welcome Baya Tebi for the review of some of the national dailies today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I have the Nation newspaper. Let's begin with that. Above the nameplate of the Nation newspaper, we have Appeal Court quashes death penalty for Kano singer. It's on page 8. Terrorists didn't overrun military base, says the defense headquarters. That's on page 5. Buhari mourns as ex-IG Gambo Jimeta dies. It's on page 5. New teachers' retirement age takes effect this month. The story is on page 29. Now the lead story, of course, before that, let's take this on African Development Bank, AFDB, forecasts Africa's loss of $409 billion to COVID-19 in 2 years. That's according to the forecast of African Development Bank. Now, out of school children, now 6.8 million, says federal government. And there's on page 8. Shira boys held in Yola, on page 7. Now, Jonathan, Jega, Nwodo, Ogbe disagree on restructuring. That's the lead story on the Nation newspaper. And Buhari lost at the bottom of the front page of the Nation. Buhari to NSA, end banditry around Zamfara gold mines now. That's on page 8. Kingsley.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper from above the name flag. Nigeria's telephone subscribers now 208 million, says NCC. NGF, that's the Governors Forum, distances governors from Bello's comments on COVID-19. U.S. in-flight passengers will present COVID-19 results. That's according to a new President Biden. The federal government releases 6.4 billion naira to establish 38 oxygen plants. You have as an earpiece there the latest COVID-19 updates with respect to Nigeria and then the rest of the world. Fatalities in Nigeria now 1,485. And yesterday, at least 4,000 persons died in the United States from COVID-19. This story comes with a kicker. Calls for restructuring. Go to National Assembly. Presidency tells ACF, that's Arewa Consultative Forum. Wodo and Adebanjo as agitation spreads. Restructuring absolutely necessary to deal with problems confronting us. That's according to Ogbe. Only National Assembly, non-Buhari, can restructure Nigeria, says presidency. The three photographs on the front page there are captured by the caption and the headline that follow immediately. Farmers, forest guards, and members of the National Union of Road Transport Workers during a protest against the incessant abduction of their members by gunmen suspected to be herdsmen, and registering their support for the order by Governor Akeredolu asking herdsmen to vacate forest reserves in Ondo State. The protest took place in Akure yesterday, Thursday. Southwest governors should employ laws to cage killer herdsmen. That's attributed to monarchs, with details on page 9. Nothing wrong with godfathers in Nigerian politics, according to a minister. It's North Central's turn to produce president, and that's according to the Nigeria Assembly. As Zakzaki's wife contracts COVID-19, undergoes treatment in prison. Matawale threatens crackdown on politicians as Zamfara and Kaduna bandits kill 19. Appeal Court voids Kano musician's death sentence, orders retrial. And federal government contracts over 900 million naira railway e-ticketing service to concessionaire. Page 16. Bayo.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Let's start with the issue relating to banditry. President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered the National Security Advisor to coordinate immediate response to rising banditry in communities in Zamfara State. It is reported that a village, Nahuche village in Bungudu local government area, had bandits on motorbikes invading the town and abducting many persons, including women. Governor Bello Mutawale was in fact informed of that invasion by a text message. It may also be recalled that the Speaker of Zamfara State, Nasir Magaya had recently appealed to President Muhammadu Buhari to intervene in the incessant killings in Zamfara. A statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Information, Garba Shehu, says the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Munguno, is to coordinate a meeting of the Minister of Defense, Minister of Interior, and Minister of Mines and Steel to respond to security challenges fueled by illegal mining in Zamfara. The directors, the DGs of the Department of State Services as well as National Intelligence are also to help in tackling the challenges brought about by over 20,000 illegal miners who are undermining the economy and security in Zamfara State. Government has explained why it has to broaden its funds by deficit budgeting as a result of declining revenue all over the years. President Muhammadu Buhari said that Nigeria had to resort to deficit budgeting, which stood about 32 trillion debt as of September 2020. Speaking at the first national tax dialogue, he said dwindling government revenue makes it necessary to place pressure on Nigerians to be alive to their responsibility as regards tax. The administration now has put in place a tax strategy policy, and it is statutorily provided for in the Finance Act of 2020. Federal Inland Revenue has been challenged and mandated to stamp out base erosion and profit shifting and plug all revenue leakages. Government agencies are also to plug all revenue leakages and ensure that their operations are automated and to cover all their activities so that Nigeria, the tax agency, will be able to interact with them most effectively. In the keynote address presented by the President of Africa Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, said Nigerian economy will rebound by 2% this year 2021 and 2% by next year 2022. He enjoined that as far as taxes are concerned, taxes be employed to promote development. He made two specific recommendations. Private sector should be encouraged for the responsibilities of infrastructure, while also attracting foreign direct investment. He cautioned against the idea of prolonged tax holidays because he says this can be counterproductive. There is the Daily Trust Dialogue Forum, for which there have been several perspectives to restructuring. Former President Goodluck Jonathan says we cannot restructure Nigeria without overcoming the issues that polarizes us as a nation. He identified some of these issues as nepotism, ethnic and religious differences, and the general lack of patriotism. He was speaking as chairman of the 18th Daily Trust Dialogue, and he said that Nigeria have mutual suspicion towards one another. This, he says, must be eliminated to have a better Nigeria. There are other persons too who spoke there. Speaking on the theme restructuring, why and now, Professor Atahiru Jego pointed out that heightened politicization of ethnic, regional and religious identities by politicians and opinion leaders is responsible for the clamor for restructuring. On his own part, about restructuring, the former Minister of Information and the former President of the Ohanese Ndigbo, Nia Onwodo, says that domestic security provided for in 1960 and 1973 Constitution made Nigeria by ethnic groups, and he says that the 1999 Constitution overthrew the sovereignty of the regions, and he's therefore advocating that there should be 1999 Constitution cannot be used to regulate the activities of the nation, because it was put together by 47 persons comprising of 40 military officers, and by the time President Olusegun Obasanjo was sworn in 1979, it took 4 days before the National Assembly could be inaugurated because the Constitution had not been properly put together. He advocated for a resort to the national conference, a fresh national conference, or go back to the 2014 national conference. Chief Olu Ayo Adebayo also advocated for implementation of 2014 national conference. There were other speakers too. Chief Audu Ogbe, on behalf of the Arewa Consultative Forum, asked the necessary question. He says the question is, what shape will the reform take? And he said categorically it will be impossible to revert to the regional structure. The Northern Elders Forum.
I'm sorry to jump in here. Yes. There are two issues that I would like us to, in addition to what you have said, to deal with so that we don't get pressed for time. One is on the front page, and I think Kirian also read it from the front page. I have it on the front page of the Punch newspaper. It says, that's Nigeria Governors Forum, distances governors from Bello's comments on COVID-19. This is a clear rebuke of one of their members by the other members of the Governors Forum. If you recall, Governor Yahya Bello of Kogi State has been peddling all kinds of coronavirus conspiracy theories, including the latest in which he said that the vaccine was a killer, intended to eliminate the people, that any person who has coronavirus should come to Kogi State, and then of course you will be free. Last weekend, we saw the potential super spreader event that was held, shown live on television, where there was no social distancing and very few persons wearing their masks. So the fact that the Governors Forum have now said, listen, yes, you have a right to free speech, but we do not agree with you on this strain of conspiracy theories that you've been bounding all over the place. And I think that's a significant step.
Yes, the coordinator of the Governors Forum as regards COVID-19, that is the governor of Delta State, was very emphatic about that and said that COVID-19 is a scientific challenge and the world has acknowledged that, and therefore he has enjoined and advised his brother governor to avoid pronouncements that actually can endanger the public confidence in the initiatives towards fighting COVID-19.
As a matter of fact, the rebuking is coming very late, because Governor Bello has been on this for a very long time. Right from the beginning, he has never accepted or believed that there's COVID-19. Even when the former chief of staff, who visited him during his mother's burial, had to die of COVID-19, yet he's insisting that there's not like COVID-19. And that is perhaps the reason why the NCDC, we don't have any reports on Kogi with respect to COVID-19. And one of our guests here some time ago wondered to say, why is Kogi excluded from the list of states that could have COVID-19 infected persons? So now it's a kind of confusion, because while Kogi cannot say, look, we don't have any COVID-19 in Kogi State, and if persons are suffering from COVID-19 in that state, they may be dying without anybody attending to them, and that also encourages spread of disease in that state.
Yes, it's very worrying, because Kogi, incidentally, is very central in Nigeria. It's bordered by 10 other states. And even when during the lockdown, when all the states surrounding Kogi had lockdown, Kogi had not locked down. And so that is a matter that's very worrying. And something has to be done about that.
But there's a point of curiosity about the resolutions of the Governors Forum.
Yes.
The Governors Forum set up a committee of experts headed by Professor Yewole Tomoru to advise members on the procurement and administration of vaccines expected to arrive in Nigeria in February. Why is this another duplication of effort? The Federal Ministry of Health, and indeed we had Professor Tomoru was our guest sometime late last year. The Federal Minister of Health has already set up a committee to advise the government on the procurement and dispensing of vaccines. So why are the Governors Forum now setting up another committee for the same purpose?
Well, before the Governors Forum held their last meeting, for which they discussed the issue of COVID-19, there had been expression of concern that the states have been left out in what appears to be the distribution of vaccine that will be arriving in the country. We're expecting about 10,000 vaccines by the end of this month. And under the vaccine distribution by the African continent, we are supposed to get about another 40 million doses. So the governors are saying that they are not aware and they are not involved in the distribution of the vaccine. But the interesting point here now is that the same Professor Tomori, who is now to advise the Governors Forum about it, is also a member of the national team. Therefore, there will be a sync between the national body and the bodies established by the governors forum.
They just want to play a role, otherwise there would have been no need, no necessity for that, because if the Federal Ministry of Health is championing the cause of the COVID-19 vaccine for COVID-19, then there will be no need for duplication of efforts, as since already pointed out, because that will bring some kind of confusion in the process. In any case, it's not a cheap and easy vaccine to come by, but when it gets to Nigeria, definitely the government will know how best to distribute the vaccines.
You recall that during the first lockdown, the federal government directed that Lagos, Ogun, and the FCT were the ones that were to lock down. All the other responsibilities about locking down or monitoring COVID-19 were the responsibilities of the states. So you can see that the division of the national bodies as far as COVID-19 is concerned. So this initiative, I think, is to ensure that they also are involved in the issue of COVID-19 vaccine distribution.
And by the way, this is not a by the way story, it's a significant story. Joe Erico,
yes,
an assistant coach of the Super Eagles. He had also been a goalkeeper for the national team known as Green Eagles. Passed on yesterday. He was, according to my count, 71 years or 72 years. He was a goalkeeper during his days, and he kept for NEPA Football Club of Lagos. And the reason I'm raising this is that, look, in those days, Kylian, of course, you are in Enugu, you had P&T Vasco da Gama, and then you also have Vendel Insurance. So big companies today are posting all kinds of huge profits. Where are their football teams? Where are their sports teams?
Yes, it is indeed. The private sector contributed tremendously to engendering interest and promoting football, sports, particularly football, in the early days. I think maybe as the economy improves, they will be able to have such interest again.
All right, bye. We are already out of time, and I'd like to appreciate you for being part of our show as usual today. Thank you indeed, as always.
Thank you.
All right. You're also watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We are going to take a short break right now, but when we return, we'll deal with the topic for today, which is on issues concerning local government and, of course, local government administration in Nigeria. Stay with us.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest assets the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youth, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
You fit to do anything with the number. Everything is in no long thing with 444. No, let's not tie your brain with plenty numbers. I beg you, daddy number 444. Or any man love for. Or just a real 444. Only my 4, my love.
days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA. The Council of Our Fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Do you know that 35% of every girl child and women are raped on daily basis? Some are killed in the process, some take their lives in shame, others remain emotionally dead for life. It is sad. This culture is not ours, definitely not African. How did we allow bad culture to infiltrate and take over? Even if you lack fear for the law, what of fear of God? And you, why do you cover up rape acts when it happens? Remember, a problem shared is a problem half solved. Never cover any rape act because a rapist is a murderer. It could be you or your loved ones next. Women must be treated like the prize gem they are. Say no to rape.
In my house, we may look alike, but we are very different individuals. My adorable twins, they look so alike, but they don't like wearing the same things. And my little man, I had to find out the hard way because I've been trying to teach him my way. He loves to learn his own way because doing things his way is more fulfilling. Everybody believes their way is best. That's why Golden Penny Pasta is our favorite meal because due to its non-stickiness, it allows me to satisfy everybody just the way they want it.
Golden Penny Pasta, made with durum wheat, is tasty, nutritious, a source of protein and fiber, and non-sticky. So you can cook, serve, and eat your pasta just the way you like it. Go on and enjoy your Golden Penny Pasta the way you want it. With Golden Penny Pasta, your way is best.
To resume our discussion on governing Nigeria's rural communities, which began yesterday, let's take this background report put together by Oyemi Ajayi.
So if we take the issue of the manner in which successive states at the center have given attention or priority to rural development, we will see that there's a very serious gap, and that has contributed very tremendously in the creation of several ungoverned spaces as we have in Nigeria today, especially in the northern part of this country where there are series of very thick forests throughout the region, and therefore uninhabited by the population, giving rise, and sanctuary to these criminals and bandits.
What kind of monitoring and evaluation mechanisms do we have in place? In my village, as an example, in Sokoto in Lugundaji, if I go there today and I'm in an emergency situation and I call any of the security agencies, how many of them will I be able to rally around? Probably less than 10. When you have bandits in sometimes between 100 to 500 coming to attack locations. So in direct answer to your question, yes, the responsibility is on the chairman theoretically, but what of the authority? Unfortunately, the authority is not with him. The authority for security lies in Abuja.
But the problem we have, how many state governments in Nigeria have been able to conduct a free and fair election?
They have state electoral commission in the constitution. They do selections, they don't do election. There are some states for 8 years, they have a caretaker. When there's an alienation of government from the people, how are you going to have development when you select unwanted persons to be administrators at the local level? How are you going to cultivate the goodwill, the input of the people towards that development that will bring about prosperity and security of the locality? So if you are talking about security problem in the locality, the first problem is that you are imposing on them those that are not even wanted. If the people elect their councillors, they elect their chairman in the local government, and they know that they gave them the mandate to govern that particular area, I've been sure there will be a moral support for that system of government. But they abuse the system, they don't allow election, they don't allow them to perform, they usurp their resources, they usurp their power, and they become to cast blame on the local government.
These ungoverned spaces have been there. These forests, these areas have been there. But activities were on. People engaged in meaningful and profitable activities in those areas. Why can't our people engage now in those areas? That is key.
Those were excerpts from the first part of our conversation on the same topic yesterday. Now joining us in the studios here to again discuss the subject matter, let's welcome retired Deputy Inspector General of Police, Joshak Habila. DIJ, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, viewers, and thank you for having me.
All right. Also here with us in the studios, we would like to welcome Ibrahim Goni, his Conservator General at the National Conservation Parks. Pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigerians.
And joining us from Kaduna studio is Professor Mohammed Issa. Professor Issa is a professor of governance with a specialty in local government. Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Thank you, sir, for waking up with us this morning.
Good morning, Nigeria. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
All right, and another professor with us here in the studio is Professor Nazif Dama, Professor of Development Economics, University of Abuja. Good morning, Prof, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kirian, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right, gentlemen, once again, it's a pleasure to have you join us on this program. And just to recap what has prompted all of this, we're all aware of what is happening in certain parts of the country with regard to the so-called ungoverned spaces. My colleague here and I were discussing that at the commencement of the program. Vast tracts of the country's land have been taken over by bandits, by kidnappers, armed robbers, and sundry criminals. And the concern also arises as to whether no one is in charge of those locations and as to why the criminal elements now appear to have both the governance and authority over those territories. We have also seen in recent years a massive rural-urban drift. Whole villages are said to have been abandoned in certain instances, and the evidence is there in a number of cities where shanties and other informal settlements are springing up. Here in Abuja, again, the evidence is there, and the law enforcement agents have pointed out that some of these informal settlements turn out to be hotbeds for criminal activities. So that's what we are looking at. What are the constitutive factors? What can be done to ensure that there's more effective governance of rural communities? We talked about local governments yesterday, but we do know that there are a number of urban locations that are also fully local governments. We want to start today's conversation by bringing in Professor Issa, who is, of course, a specialist in local government issues at Ahmadu Bello University. Professor Issa, tell us from your perspective what is happening to our rural communities and why have they suddenly become, as it were, sanctuaries for criminal elements?
Several factors would account for this, drift from rural areas to urban areas, or the neglect, if you like, from the rural areas. From independence, Nigeria's population was about 45 million. And today, you're talking about 206 million. And as at 1960, 84.59% population lived in the rural areas of Nigeria. Now today, about 56% of the population live in the urban areas. So you can see a sharp, drift from the rural areas to the urban areas. Now what has accounted for this is the failure of national planning. By independence, we had the first national development plan, we had the second national development plan, and we had the third national development plan, and then we turned to the strategic plan. Now alongside the failure of this planning, we moved from a structure of a federal system of government to a hierarchical system of government with military intervention in Nigerian politics, and which introduced a different pattern of administrative system in Nigeria, which is more aligned to colonial structure of administration, and it led to the usurpation of the powers of what we call local government. Although between 88 to 1993 there were differences, the local governments then enjoyed, if you like, almost 100% autonomy. But from independence, apart from that period to date, the local governments have lost every semblance of their autonomy and power. And autonomy here means political autonomy, administrative autonomy, structural autonomy, funding and financial autonomy, as well as operational autonomy. So local governments are just mere caricature, or they are mere, if you like, existing in paper as obtained in the Constitution, like was pointed out, that they are just theories rather than in practice. So what we see as elections in the local government are not just elections, they are just window dressing, they are cosmetic. Therefore you find out that the government at local level is delegitimized. It does not have the semblance of the authority of local government. So we have a lot of problems at the local level which impinge on the capacity of the local government. And please don't forget, prior to independence, the local government existed before the state. We had the native authorities, we had the local councils. In the Eastern region, for example, had its first reform in 1950. The Western region had its first reform in 1952, and then the Northern region had its local government reform in 1954. So the local government predates the state, and then of course predates what you call Nigeria today. So local governments have existed long before Nigeria existed. So if we are going to reform anything or restructure Nigeria, we should restructure Nigeria to go back to local government, not to regionalism, and empower our local government to do what they have done in the past. All the groundnut pyramids you've talked about, all the achievements you've seen in the past were done with local government, not regional government. The regional governments before independence succeeded because of a viable and veritable system of local government before independence. Now with independence, everything collapsed. Politicians hijacked the system. The military too also hijacked the system. More than any level of government, the local government have been serially abused and experienced more reforms. In 88, there was the Unwosu, 84, the Dasuki reform, 88, the Unwosu reform, 89, the political reform, and of course, up until 2004, the 11-man technical committee. So more than any level of government, the local government has seen a vicissitude of power and shift of power. And these systemic imbalances affected also the capacity of the local government to deliver. And so not until we bring sanity and some degree of order into the system of our local government, our rural communities will continue to suffer. And that accounts for the drift, if you go back to my statistics, of 84.56% in 1960 rather, of 45 million people today to 44.8% of the population living in the rural area, in spite of the exponential increase in Nigeria's population, which accounts for the fact that there's a massive shift of people into the rural areas. Now the attraction to the urban areas rather is for job, because we underdeveloped and stagnated the rural areas. For instance, when you go to the rural areas, no police station, no schools, no simple health facilities, no water supply. The basic requirement of human existence, which are fundamental rights, do not exist in the rural areas, because the system to deliver this has been, if you like, stifled out of existence, which is the local government system. And so to return Nigeria back to its lost glory, we must give emphasis in our development planning to the local government and empower the local government to be able to deliver on its mandate. The Constitution is very clear, Section 7. The system of local government through democratically elected local government council is by this Constitution guaranteed. So the Constitution guarantees the existence of local government. There's no doubt about that. Now, whether state or federal government creates the local government, it's a semantics, because people want to say that the federal system we have is not like the American. Who did the Americans copy? So we must adapt our system to our culture. The Chinese did not copy anybody to be who they are today. The Swedes did not copy anybody. Rwanda did not copy anybody to be Rwandese. Nigeria must not look outside to copy somebody to be Nigerians. We must develop Nigeria along our values, and we must identify what values we want to have as a country and as a people. And our system must go back into our history, understand our history better, and develop along the patterns and the mode in which we have evolved as a country and as a people. Not look.
Professor Issa, we have to pause you there. You have done an implicit analysis of of the scenario that led to the situation we find ourselves now with respect to local government administration in Nigeria. We will come back to you for further analysis and of course to take up other perspectives of this conversation. Now let's return to Abuja here, where we have another professor, Nasif Dama. Prof, you've listened to Professor Issa and his analysis. And of course, there's no gainsaying the fact that local government administration in Nigeria, their powers have been usurped structurally, operationally, and otherwise. Now, giving rise to what we know today, that Nigerians and government is held spellbound by bandits and other criminal elements who are governing a great part of this country. And till date, we don't seem to have an answer to that. So, what is your own opinion with respect to the situation and how local government can be reshaped or reformed to be able to be in a position to handle the situation that we have now in our local government areas across the country, especially in the north?
Thank you very much. You see, the cogent analysis done by the professor reflects the contemporary reality of what is happening in Nigeria today. And based on the historical antecedents he has provided, the native authorities before and immediately after the attainment of independence represent the present-day local government model, and we know how effective and efficient they were in terms of facilitating especially agricultural development, but importantly, harmonious relationship, coexistence, minimal security and order in the rural areas. It is on record that one single landoka of native authority is able to control vast area of land because there is a very good symbiotic relationship between traditional authority, community leaders, and security agencies, because every rural area then do have an early warning signal system of possible breakdown of law and order and criminality, and instantaneous measures are often taken in order to address those fundamental issues. So remember, there's a very strong interrelationship between security, peaceful coexistence, and prosperity. Once people are not secure, they cannot be comfortable to engage in economic activities, and there will be no prosperity. Now, in the absence of security and prosperity, and in the absence of minimal, what I call irreducible minimal supply in the local government areas or in rural communities, it is what has accentuated the rural-urban drift that we have witnessed today. But importantly, the absence of symbolic authority at the local level is also perpetuating criminality and non-capacity of the local administrations to be able to detect early warning signals of criminality and nip it in the bud. Attempts have been made by these administrations, especially through the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, to give some element of financial autonomy to the local governments. Certainly the local governments, as they are structured today, we can comfortably say that they are dead. They are not doing anything. The governors have pocketed them. Anybody can emerge as a local government chairman and councillor, and where you have systemic decadence in terms of political leadership emergence and lack of autonomy on the part of the so-called local government chairmen and councillors financially and administratively, then certainly you cannot have the anticipated trickling down effect in terms of prosperity and governance, which are symbol of authority, which will give confidence for people to engage in meaningful economic activities, knowing that there is an authority overlooking what they are doing. Now, in the absence of that, criminal elements have perpetuated and perpetrated local government areas, villages and communities, and because traditional institutions have been neglected and are not consulted in terms of governance and authority. Now, this toxic combination of lack of consultation, lack of authority for traditional leaders, lack of financial autonomy on the part of political leaders of the local government, and absence of a clearly defined criteria for choosing competent people to govern local governments have combined to bring us to the disastrous quagmire that we're witnessing today in terms of criminality, in terms of banditry, in terms of lack of economic activity, in terms of absolute poverty, and the accentuated implication now and in the future associated with this toxic combination.
All right, Professor Nazif Idama, once again, thank you very much there for your insights. We'll come back to you in the course of the conversation. Let's bring in now retired Deputy Inspector General of Police, Choshak Habila. DIG, of course, you've listened to the two earlier speakers, and indeed it's a point that was also echoed yesterday when we started the conversation. It does appear that rural communities and therefore the locations where we now find a good number of the hardened criminals who are either bandits or kidnappers for ransom and armed robbers, that there's very little security presence, particularly, say, the police. I mean, somebody can argue and say, oh, we have so few personnel. But the symbolic authority about which Professor Nazif Idama spoke a while ago is also significant. Why do we appear to have also neglected the rural communities in terms of just even symbolic presence as part of the governance mechanism for those locations?
Thank you so much. I've heard the position of the professors, and I would like to add this, that in the rural communities, we have a situation where members of those communities and the government that is established at the local level seems not to have the capacity to be able to bring together the youth and other people within that community to be able to take their safety into their hands. Like I said, security is local. Some past years we had very robust police station, police post, police station, police post, and police division in these rural areas. And during that period, there were some element of some safety. And of course, the local government also were a little bit responsive, you know, collaborating with the security that is on ground to be able to find out exactly what is happening and what are likely to be the security challenges, because everything that is collapsing is as a result of lack of safety in that general area. And so I make haste to say that until we are able to sensitize the local communities and until we're able to realize that to be able to provide robust security in the rural areas, that the community must be involved. No matter the amount of police or other security agencies that you push in out there, if you push out some of, if you increase the number of the police posts, the police division, and the men out there, you are not going to get it right without working with the locals. Security is local, and you must engage the youth that are within that area. You must also have the cooperation of the traditional rulers and all other sort of kind of individuals that are there, because there is no any crime that would be committed without preparation. And in the rural areas, it is very, very easy to pick those that are criminal, those that also go to bring criminals within that community. And until we're able to organize them well, get the traditional rulers involved, maybe return back the police posts that we normally have in the rural area, and educate the people that nobody will give them safety. You cannot guarantee safety without the people, being brought in to be part of participants, because people who come to commit crime, if they are not within that community, they must have passed some communities. And in the communities, in various communities in this country, you also are able to know who is living at what place. And then if there are new faces that entered, people know. It is true that the forest is ungoverned, and it is also true that the government have tried its best. We have the conservation general here with us, and he will relate his experiences. We've had opportunities, and we've had course to go into the forest, lead operation, and we discovered that there's a need for the local communities through the local government chairman. They should be able the government should strengthen the local authority, and also collaborate with the traditional rulers and those who live around the communities in the rural areas to be able to open their eyes and look at exactly what is happening in this forest. The forest, for example, from Kagara in Niger, span through Kebbi in Zamfara, through what we call Ansadao, and then Bugium. And it's also the same forest we call the Falgoro forest that span from Bauchi and into Kano. Those places, if you need to rout those criminals that hibernate there, you also need the cooperation of the youth, the cooperation of the locals. The locals must make an input. And of course, even if the government provides fund, and then the templates for checking the activities of these criminals in the rural areas are not properly placed, you are not likely to get anything. And so I think that the community, I think also that the youth, I think also that those who live in the various rural areas, whether they hibernate in the town and after some time move into these villages, must develop some interest. The traditional rulers must also be very open and then disposed to the youth. And then, of course, the local authority must be empowered so that they can be strengthened, so that there should be what we call an eagle eye that is placed on these rural areas so that we can check the infiltration of criminals. Doing that will definitely have a very positive result in trying to ensure that there is safety in the rural areas.
Yeah, gentlemen, from what we've heard so far, it does appear that we all have a good understanding of the fact that our rural areas are not properly manned, and it has given rise to a myriad of governance issues that have led to what Professor Dama referred to as a toxic combination, a situation where there's a general system decadence in those parts of the country. Now, let's bring in Ibrahim Goni, conservator general, National Conservation Parks. The last speaker, actually brought you in a way as to what can be done. We have vast forest areas spanning over several states, and that's also a difficult thing to handle. Give us an idea of what you think could be done, perhaps in the face of what have been issues that have been raised concerning what is happening there. What can happen, professionally speaking? How can these forests be properly guarded?
Thank you very much, Gideon. And maybe let me quickly correct my designation, Conservator General, National Park Service. The issue of security in rural areas has so many facets. And the facet that concerns me is the facet the former DIG has raised, the issue of forest and forest reserves. Nigeria has about 1,129 forest reserves and 30 game reserves. All this put together is a large chunk of forest. And the issue of saying some are ungoverned, some are governed, I tend to disagree that there is no forest that is not governed. Because based on the Land Use Act, the land is the prerogative of states. So if the states own land, those forest areas that are in the states or local government has to be governed by the state governments and local governments. So it means that somebody somewhere else is not doing what he's supposed to do. The forestry structure in this country is such that every local government has a Department of Agriculture. In that department, there's a unit of forestry. That unit ensures that the forest reserve, the forest areas are to be monitored. In those days, like the earlier professor said, we realized that the forest is in the hands of the emirs or the chiefs, while the local government only gives support to what the chief does. Before anybody goes hunting into those places or felling of any trees, the chief must be aware. And if perhaps anybody kills an animal, maybe a very important animal such like lion, leopard, and other things, these things are always brought to the chief's palace. That way, there was articulation. Everybody was doing his duty, everybody was aware. But with the various reform mentioned by the two professors in the local government system, some of these things were turned upside down. They were turned upside down in the sense that the emirs were relieved of their powers. These powers were now vested in the local government chairman, who do not even have the time to stay around to supervise the local government. Then you realize that the local government also rely on this forest for their revenue. They give out permit on limited basis for people to source for timber. They also give out permit for people to hunt some special types of animals. So if our forest areas must be properly managed, there should be a synergy between the emirate councils, the local government, and, like the former DIJ said, members of the community. Security should not be looked at as that thing that government alone must do. Security should be everybody's responsibility. And if everybody is sensitized, mobilized, I think whenever there's any movement different from what you used to see, a report can be made. And once that report are made, action is quickly taken. The market woman who sells yam in the market, is aware of a newcomer in that market. Somebody comes today, shows you new mint, tells you he doesn't have money, he wants to give you dollar or these things. You should suspect from where is this dollar coming from, where is this new mint coming. Such people should be coordinated to be able to make reports to the relevant authorities. And there should be proper structure of managing our forest reserves. You have forest guards, you have game guards. Some of these game guards are just there. They are not given the necessary equipment, the necessary wherewithal to perform. So the structure is just there. Look at the government, the budget of some of these state governors. Environment is always in the low priority list. So there's high time we hype up this thing so that environment is given a higher priority. Just like what the federal government is doing now. Based on this scenario of banditry and other things, the president has come out to declare, to approve that some of these forest reserves and be taken over and managed as national parks. This is a very important effort to at least reduce the numbers of, maybe in quote, the ungoverned spaces. Thank you very much.
All right, Conservator General, but thank you very much. But just before we bring in Professor Mohammed Issa again, what is the relationship at the moment between the National Park Service and the state ministries of agriculture, which also have the forestry department and therefore the forest guards? What is the relationship? Who does what?
Our relationship is such that we advocate. Our role with the states and local government is advocacy. We cannot enforce anything on them. But however, there's a federal department of forestry that coordinates every pocket of forest in this country and reports to the Minister of Environment. And when there are any issues that the minister has to maybe meet a governor or a chairman, the minister quickly does that, draw the attention of the minister, the state governor, something is happening in your forest reserve. Quickly do something about it. Or a particular animal is being mismanaged, not properly handled. Please do something about it. So our relationship also extends to the extent that there is this National Council of Environment, where all state commissioners of either environment or agriculture, depending on the structure in the state, are members. At this Council of Environment, decisions are taken, issues are raised, briefings are taken on what is happening on the structure, so that at large, the whole country forest activities are coordinated and put in a form that is at least seems to be one thing that everybody is doing.
You know, the question I asked concerning the synergy, yes, as rightly mentioned, you know, we have a chunk of the forestry, you know, where the states are responsible, and then part of it where the federal government are responsible. Well, the question I want to ask is this. Yes, I can see how difficult it is really, you know, to man these forests. And one wonders if your men or those responsible in manning the forests, are they armed? Because we are talking about armed banditry and what have you. Is there any measure, you know, perhaps statutorily, that allows your men to be armed, or any other perhaps a constitutionally set up group, either from the state or federal government, that are part of keeping the forest safe, that are armed?
Yes, thank you very much. Section 42 of the Act establishing the National Park Service give us powers to carry light arms. So with these powers, our men are armed. And even the state forest guards are armed. They are armed. It is only those at the local government level that are not armed. And where you are not armed, where your firepower is not enough, we go into strategic partnership with other agencies. Like in the National Park Service, Joshua is here, when he was in service, we are always relating. We are always relating. They have given my officers training on intelligence gathering, information collection. Just last year, 2019, we have engaged with the Chief of Army Staff. There was a workshop on forest and national security. Every officer above, from the rank of colonel was made to attend that workshop. At the end of that workshop, the group were divided into two to undertake a tour of 2 national parks. That has provided an insight on what we do in the forest and what obtains in the forest. And then apart from that, we also engage at the local level with the vigilante, which are very, very, very important. And I know for some states like Niger State, they have acquired arms for the vigilante, kept with the police. Whenever there's need for any operation, the arms are released to them. After the operation, you return the arms. So the question of you are not armed, you just sit down there say you are not armed, no, does not arise. When you are not armed, you have to think, how do I support my efforts? This is what has led us into collaboration with the Nigerian Police Force, the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Civil Defense, and of course the DSS.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ibrahim Goni, Conservator General. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's go back to Professor Mohammed Issa at Kaduna Network Center. Professor Issa, well, the missing links have been identified, but what can be done to ensure that at least we make do with the current constitutional and legal arrangements that we have with regard to the governance of local governments and therefore more effectively of rural communities? Let me give this as an example. You said, look, there's lack of authority for traditional institutions, and yet we do know that traditional rulers get some stipends from the local governments. What is the purpose of that stipend? Is it just to say at the end of the month we'll give you this stipend, you take care of your palace, take care of your staff at the palace? You say there's lack of consultation. Why is there this lacuna in terms of consultation between the local government, which is the legal authority, and the traditional authority? And the point has also been raised about the local community itself. In some parts of the country, community development associations are very strong. Town unions are also very strong. Why is it that all these linkages have not been fused in such a way that there is greater synergy and therefore perhaps, if you like, better outcomes with regard to the security of their environment? Because if you say, okay, a traditional ruler, this is your domain, and in the meantime criminal elements have taken over your domain, obviously you're on the way to losing your empire or whatever remains of it.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. From 1984, when the Dasuki reform took place, it separated the local government from the Emirate Council. There was a distinction or a separation between the Emirate Council and the local council or the local authority. However, the Emirate Council were given powers to meet and discuss affairs, and they are capable of advising the local government. That's one. Secondly, the local council have what you call police community relations committee, and there's a security committee. The security committee is chaired by the local government chairman, along with membership of all security agencies existing within the local government, and also has representation of religious bodies, civil society groups, and of course youth leadership, market women association, traders association are members of the security committee, while the local DPO is the chairperson of the police community relations committee. However, in governance, if you establish an institution or a process, you must fund it, you must finance it to be able to meet its objective or goals. With the stifling particularly of Section 162, which creates, the joint state-local government joint account. If the funding does not come to the local government, then of course, if you do not allow the people to make their choice in terms of who to lead them, so you've taken away political autonomy, which invariably affects administrative autonomy, and then of course with Section 162 of the Constitution, it affects the financing and the funding capacity of the local government to deliver. And we know it's not new that the financing and the funding of local governments are in the pockets of governors all across the federation. So without funding, without proper capacity, without the autonomy, regulated autonomy, the local governments are incapable. They are mere symbols of what they are. They are mere caricature of what they represent in the letters and spirits of our Constitution. They exist in paper and in structure, but lack the capacity to operate and cannot deliver on their core mandate, which are also enshrined in the Constitution and in the fourth schedule of the Constitution. Now, if you go to communities, we will not say that communities are doing nothing. The communities on their own are trying to respond to the little problems they have. But these bandits, these criminals, have superior power over and above the capacity of the local government. Let's look at the recent incidents in Kankara, for example, the Kankara local government incident a couple of weeks back. There are only 20 police and 1 DPO in the entire vast territorial area of Kankara, and only 10 are on duty at any point in time. So how do these 10 people respond to a bandit on motorbikes of about 50 motorbikes carrying 3 bandits with 3 AK-47? Of course, the superior firepower and the number is higher. So we need a synergy of security forces. But the local government must be empowered to deliver on their mandate. They must be allowed. Recently, a bill has gone to the National Assembly to delist and remove the local governments from the Constitution. When we are trying to empower the local government to act, somebody is sponsoring a bill to delist the local government completely from the Constitution. And it has gone through the first reading. We are on the verge of burying the system. Not only killing it, we've killed it and we're burying it. So we must go back. The local governments are our history in Nigeria. Local government existed before the entity called Nigeria. And there are serious empirical evidence that shows that the local government performed, like Professor Nazif pointed out. So we must empower the local government. Now let me also point one fact to you. While there are drifts to urban areas, and criminalization and ethnic profiling of a particular group of people in the rural area, some people move to the forest due to the failure of our planning policies. Much emphasis is placed on infrastructure in urban areas. Much development takes place in the urban area. So it attracts people to the urban areas. Those that is unable to accommodate in the slums, and don't forget, even in the urban areas, 69% of the population live in the slum areas. So those who live in the slums are attracted to banditry, to criminalization of the process. So criminals are attracted to the forest because the police are unable to man those areas. I'm sorry to the Conservation General to say that there are no ungoverned spaces. There are. He just pointed out that even he himself does not have the capacity to man the entire 1,200 kilometers square of the space. And he has accepted to. So we have ungoverned spaces, meaning that our police are unable to cover those areas, lack the superior power, and lack even, look at a simple police station, for example. It does not befit the status of Nigeria as the giant of Africa. We don't have police posts. I have been to Tureta when it was created in 1994. Local government provided funding for SSS, provided funding for customs, provided funding for immigration, provided funding for police, and then provided even accommodation for SSS in the local area. Where is the budget of these institutions in the federal government budgeting? Where is the funding to this institution? So we must face the reality that we have de-emphasized security for other businesses. Just like everything else is collapsing in our society, we must go back to the basic. Restructuring is not our problem. Whatever system you put in place, if we do not face the core issues, the Chinese first face a cultural revolution, value reorientation. First, we must rejig our system of thinking, our values, our attitude and orientation. We must build in us as Nigerians a sense of patriotism, a sense of Nigeria over and above tribe, region, ethnicity. And Nigeria is greater than any group or individual. First, if we accept that, then we invest in what is called Nigeria and identify what are those core values. And one of those core values is rebuilding our local government system.
All right.
Well, he has actually raised some very salient points, that are not too far away from his original comment initially, which has to do with the fact that the council, the local government area in Nigeria actually is now a caricature of its former self, and that has really did not pay off well, with respect to what's happening at the rural areas in Nigeria today. But clearly, it would also be nice to bring in Professor Dama here.
Just before we bring in Professor Nazifi Dama, he's a prof and he can go on and on. We'll have a commercial break, and after the break we'll bring in Professor Nazifi Dama and indeed the other guests.
Edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the game changer, His Excellency Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State. Broadcasting in a digital economy, Maxwell Logo gives an insight. This edition also features Nancy Naji of AIT, a name synonymous with business. Meet the NCDC boss, Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, also x-rays the relevance of social media in the modern society. Meet some TV professionals who have impacted their spaces and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion. Dialogue, empathy, love and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
Okay, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Just before we went on that short break, my colleague Kirian was priming himself for a question for Professor Nazifi Dama. Kirian?
Yes, Kingsley. Professor Dama, I also wanted to make comment, on the question that Kingsley put to Professor Issa in Kaduna as to why we have a local government authority in Nigeria. We have traditional institutions then we have other well-organized bodies in the rural areas, town unions and what have you. Yet there's no synergy, between these bodies as to find a way to tackle the menace of criminality in most parts of the rural communities we have in Nigeria today, especially in the north. And we recall that when it comes to Zamfara issue, that we had at a point where a local chief was actually sanctioned for his activity that has to do with the criminals. And it does appear also that there are other elements in rural communities who are conniving, or perhaps who are agents of criminals, who are in the forest. So now, what should this be, and what should be the appropriate way to address the scenario? Because as it is right now, it does appear that there is no government in rural areas. Yes, what we have is now banditry, criminality, and for people to survive in those areas, some may have decided to connive with them for reasons of survival.
Thank you very much, Kirian. The symbiotic relationship that ought to exist between local communities, traditional rulers or community leaders, and the local government and security agencies cannot exist in the absence of a functional local government system that is financially autonomous and on ground. The reality is that if you go to any local government headquarters today, the only time you see some semblance of activity is when there is an allocation to pay salaries. After the payment of the salaries, the local government chairman and the councillors migrate to urban areas and they deserted the local governments. That is one. Number two, and I'm sorry to say this, there is no very good synergy even among the security agencies that are supposed to work in harmony and provide an early warning signal system in order to detect problem right from the word go. And let me give you an example with my good self. In 2009, I was traveling to Kano from Abuja by road with a friend. Around 8:30 p.m., in fact around 8:40 p.m., I was listening to BBC in my car. 74 kilometers to Kano, I was ambushed by armed robbers. And they are not sophisticated armed robbers. They appear as if they are with police uniforms. They are young Fulani boys. They shattered my glass, took away our money and phones. And we reported to the next nearby police station. And the confession made by the DPO, which I am putting on record, but I will not put his name for security reasons and to protect him, because he's still a serving officer, that there are SSS officers that are posted to that local government. None of them come to work except the end of the month. They will collect his criminal diary record. It is on the basis of the inputs in that criminal diary record they use to write their report. And he told me that the young men that robbed me are living in a rural Ruga community. 4 of them are known. They are living with their parents, but their parents and the community give them protection because they share the proceeds of the crime with them. This is a typical scenario of what is happening in most rural communities. Now, we have abandoned national development planning. We have abandoned financing of local government, despite the effort made by Mr. President through the provisions or the guidelines released by the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit almost 2 years ago. But the state governments have found a way of circumventing those regulations and refusing to allow the local governments to have control over their resources. The local economy, symbolized by the administrative activities of the local government, is an extremely important component of facilitating real governance at the local government level, undertaking small-scale projects that have trickling down effect of resources within the local government area, and therefore invigorating the local economy, empowering people, reducing absolute poverty, and reducing chances of criminality arising from absolute poverty, and also reducing the possibility of people being recruited by criminals because of the small stipend they will give them from proceeds of criminality. Now, in addition, it is also important, as I said earlier, that there must be proper synergy between the various security agencies that operate in the local governments in terms of number, in terms of financing, in terms of operational equipment. We have talked about the infiltration of our communities, particularly border communities, with arms. There are simple drones that can be fitted with modern application that are manned whatever time of the day, that can survey our borders and detect every form of arm and ammunition that is coming through the vast area. So where no personnel can be readily available on ground, alhamdulillah, advancements in science and technology, and drone technology particularly, have enabled us, have given us the capability to detect 24/7 who is coming into our border areas, who is doing what. Even the ungoverned spaces, the 1,129 forest reserves, there are drones that you can deploy that can give you 24/7 what is happening in those areas, and therefore being able to detect at an early level possibilities of amassing or migration of criminals in a given area, including the type of weapons that they do have, so that proactive measures and action can be taken by the government to prevent further escalation of that criminality. In addition, the reality is that the traditional rulers and the community leaders hold the key to accentuating peace and prosperity in the local government. So until and unless they are organized with a functional local government system, which of course is a tragedy of monumental proportion, what is happening, that somebody is sponsoring bill in the National Assembly now to even scrap the local government. Why? Because this country has been characterized with persistent impunity over the last 21 years since the return of the so-called democracy in court. People have committed crimes against the nation. They have gotten away with it, and now they have become emboldened to even destroy or to seek to scrap a very important tier of government enshrined in the Constitution that could be used as a vehicle for facilitating accelerated development and prosperity at the local area, and therefore endangering sustainable agricultural development, food security, and economic prosperity on the part of the locals. Why? Because for all the years we have seen, right from 1990 to date, the governors have been taken away with impunity. Resources have been meant for local governments. Yeah. And to the best of my knowledge, there was no single governor that has been prosecuted for siphoning resources meant for local government and therefore facilitating their underdevelopment. Finally, is the issue of financial inclusion. A significant proportion of our local governments operate in the context of what is called informal economy. Most people in the local government, particularly farmers and animal husbandry activists, they are paid with cash in all forms of transactions. They don't have banks, and they don't have access to easily take their cash to urban areas and banks. And because of that, the criminal elements in the local communities know who and who is engaging in which activity, and the likely resources at this disposal. People will be kidnapped, armed robbery will be taken, people will get money, because the end result is positive. it perpetuates a continuous cycle of armed banditry and armed robbery because the local economy is informal in nature and is devoid of financial inclusion. So the issue is, as Nigerians, just like what Indians did, we must put our thinking cap that in the context of our peculiarity, what specific financial inclusion strategies we need to put in place in order to reduce the attraction of the preponderance of cash within the rural areas. That is one of the key factors perpetuating this cycle of criminality, banditry, and armed robbery.
All right, Professor Mazibi Dama, thank you very much there for your views. I just would want to point out to both yourself and Professor Mohammed is with regard to the locus of the local government as a third tier of government, a contrary view was expressed yesterday, that namely on account of cultural and social differences in parts of the country, that local government system should be the business of the states, and therefore you have the federating units being the states and the federal government, and so let local governments be the creature of state governments and let them deal with their own peculiarities, whatever powers you want to assign to them or whatever powers you want to assign to traditional institutions, you could then do that rather than having the current arrangements. That's the argument that was made yesterday, which is contrary to what you have. So I just had to point that out. We may not have enough time to return to that. I just want to bring in again DIG Joshua Kabila. Well, this has been also a recurrent point. As I said, we can complain about inadequacy of police personnel. But here we are, we don't have police posts in the vast majority of our rural areas. But the evidence would seem to suggest that indeed you probably have tens of thousands of policemen who are on VIP duties, and these VIP duties are in the urban areas. So which means again we are leaving our flanks in the rural areas open. I know that the Inspector General of Police has said, look, withdraw police officers who are on VIP duties, but we have had such directives issued in the past, and oftentimes we are back to square one. You see them in the urban areas where stashed outfits, they are in offices. You go to some offices, you find tens of policemen just sitting down in the office, you know, on VIP protection duties, or government spaces are left unattended. When are we going to have a change of this?
And to make it matters worse, you know, you find that we have up to 10 policemen to 1 VIP.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much. Everybody is entitled to his opinion, but I would want to say that if you even take out the policemen in the cities and push them out into those forests and in that local places, without putting some templates, without looking at some of the issues on ground, those criminals will change direction. And definitely you won't have the police that you will dominate the whole forest. But wherever you keep them, if you put them from Birnungwari to Kagara and then cover Dansadao or Bukium, you are likely to have another new route for these criminals. So the truth about it is, number one, our people should be nationalistic. There are civic responsibilities that members of the public must know, that they have a responsibility. In fact, it's about whistleblowing. There's no criminal that will walk to go and commit a crime that hardly will you say that there's no one around that saw that movement. He may not see exactly what the man is doing or at the point of that robbery. But it is true that you will walk past a lot of people and one or two people will suspect. If we have that ability of collaboration, of whistleblowing, that look, I don't understand this man's movement. There's someone that has just passed here. No, we're going to make it. I say, and I continue to say this again, that until members of the public are sensitized that security, their security and their properties, the security of their properties is in their hands. And until we're able to agree with that, for the VIPs, severally the police have made a lot of attempts to ensure that every VIP is left without protection. But the kind
without special protection.
Yes, without special protection. But you see that sometimes they become victims. We have records to show those who want to go on their own sometimes end up in a very, very life-taking. We also still see that some of the responsibilities that are given to such personalities require that they need protection. But like I told you, we should try as much as possible. The police have been trying its best that I know to try to remove, to take out a whole lot of this security that are attached to individuals, attached to politicians.
I just want to, DIG Joshua Kabila, I'm sure you have heard accounts of persons who have been kidnapped for ransom.
Yes.
Passengers in buses and some law enforcement officers have also been kidnapped. Yes. They are taken by kidnappers, and as happened during the slave trade, they march them into the forest. March. You know, so this is happening, and then you are saying, where are the law enforcement agents? They march them into the forest where they have their camps, and this is taking place not just in the northwest, it's taking place in the south. Bini Auchi, Okene, Lokoja highway, and it's a forbidden route for most persons who will say, look, I won't go there. There was a tragic incident that occurred last year, I'm sure you're aware of that. A former member of this, a member and speaker of the House of Assembly of Edo State passed away in Abuja. His body was being conveyed to Edo State for burial, and kidnappers stopped the convoy, allowed the body to go, and they took the wife and the mother and the driver of that family. They marched them into the forest. I don't know.
Thank you. These are the ungoverned space. There's no situation where you think you will cover all the places. They look at areas that they can quickly operate. On Kaduna Road, you remember we deployed about 600 mobile police and about 300 military officers. We brought them together in Qatari, we trained them, and we deployed. But there was a reduction, great fall in the number of these incidences then. But how long? This kidnap that you know is just with a twinkle of an eye. They will operate for 5 minutes and they are gone. But usually the communities where they take their route to come and do this saw them. Those also after the commission where they escape, the communities in the rural area, 1 or 2 must see, but they don't say. And that's why I'm saying that our civic responsibility must be strengthened, so that there will be no situation where you think that the police and other security agencies will be everywhere dominating so as to prevent crime. One best way of preventing crime is educating the communities. All this kidnap, taking of students in a school and taking them out.
We really may have to pause it here because of time. From our conversation this morning, it does appear that there's a huge problem when it comes to security of this country, especially in the rural areas. And you have let us know that if you withdraw the number of police officers who are guarding a VIP, the VIP might become a victim. Then we'll have hundreds of people who are victims outside the city, and that has become a very huge problem for this country. As a matter of fact, you can have one policeman or 2 to a VIP, not 10 or more than that. We've seen their convoy. It's hurting, for ordinary Nigerians to see such things happening, and we leave others in rural areas to suffer. And that's what very lot of those raised now. The issue that Kingsley raised about somebody who was kidnapped, whose dead body was the mother of the dead body was kidnapped, and all of that. These are not good stories to hear about at all in this country. Please, we have some tweets here.
I know, Kieran. I know this. I'm sorry. There's a point I thought the Conservator General could speak to very briefly, so that we know where we are coming from and then where we are also going to. We hear of camps being set up in all these forests, and where the forest guards and National Parks Conservation Service officers taken by surprise as these camps were being built, and you have arms and ammunition and placed in those locations, to such an extent now that even the Air Force has to fly sorties to try to seek to dislodge them. Tens of them are killed, but each time they keep proliferating. Were you taken by surprise?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. We are not taken by surprise, but like we have said on governed spaces, putting that on government spaces in quote. Because what I expected the local government to engage forest guards to monitor whether it is a forest or a forest reserve. Forest reserve has legitimacy. Forest does not have legitimacy. These guys should be able to go around with the support of the ward heads in all the locations to gather information. When you gather this information, pass it to the nearest security agent so that actions are taken. So, and when intelligence is gathered about the building up or movement of people, it depends on who is handling the intelligence. It may take time. You don't just pass an information, something is happening, the man just come and start acting. No, there must be investigation. So it is the process of investigation that takes time while the camps are expanding. It is not that they are not noticed. They are always noticed and reports are always being made.
Action not immediately
taken because it takes time to build all those camps. It takes time to build the camps.
Exactly.
These are the camps where they live. You know,
you have access to water.
Have access to water, to food, and all of that.
All right, Conservator General, thank you very much. My colleague Kieran indicated that we had some tweets. We'll just quickly go through them. Suleiman Babagana says local governments, if they are in good hands, will reduce the burden on the other two arms of government, thereby ensuring accountability and transparency.
I mean, it says the rural communities in Nigeria could only be secured, effective and flourish if we return to our sound and efficient local government administration that allows total autonomy to local government councils in Nigeria.
Shedi Agbabara, I hope this is Shedi Agbabara. There was one Shedi Agbabara in the 70s who was a quiz master. It says there are too many ungoverned spaces in Nigeria, forests, swamps, etc. Even chairmen of rural local governments abandon their areas to live in the nearest city. It is all about politics for personal profit.
Salisu, local government authorities hardly execute projects after the payment of monthly salaries due to lack of financial autonomy.
All right, Kirian,
yeah, we have much more of this, but then we just have to go.
Mike Anyakwa would like to appreciate you. Utulo Sunday, Steve Bond 07, thanks a lot. Dele Jack Solomon, we're grateful. Festus Akimboyewa and Leo Fadaka. Comrade Ungara, you're all speaking to the same issues that have been addressed in depth by our guests this morning. So it's on that note, Kirian, I would like to thank all our guests who've been with us from our Cardinal Network Center. Professor Mohammed Issa, Professor of Governance with specialty in local government at Ahmadu Bello University. Always a delight having you with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Thanks for being here today. And here in the Abuja studios, with Professor Nazifi Dama. Professor Nazifi Dama is of the University of Abuja, an economist and one-time director at the National Planning Commission.
Thank you very much.
Also here with us in the studios,
Nigeria.
yes, Ibrahim Goni, Conservator General, National Parks Service. And retired Deputy Inspector General of Police, Joshak Habila. Delight having you with us on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So that does it for us on Good Morning Nigeria for today and indeed for the week. We appreciate your being with us. Stay safe and be well. Good Morning Nigeria returns on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm Kingsley.
And I'm Kirian. Have a great weekend.